What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And of course, right when I make my ranked tier list, they drop a brand new experimental patch with tons of different changes coming soon to dynamically change up the meta. I mean, these are some really impactful changes. So we're gonna break all that down so that you know what to expect in the new meta and what characters you should be grinding and all that. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for in-depth VODs, tips and tricks, map guides, hero guides. We got it on the GameLeap website, so do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, kicking it off with the first hero on the list that got changed, we have to talk about Ashe. And one of the most important things about Ashe, if not the most important thing about Ashe, is that when she was damage boosted, she broke that 200 HP threshold. So almost every single squishy, besides some outliers such as McCree and other characters that had 250 HP, Ashe could one-shot most squishies in the game. Now, that being said, now the damage aimed down the sights on her primary weapon, the Viper, is down from 80 to 75, which means that people will be left with just a sliver of health even if she's damage boosted and she gets that headshot. And the thing is, burst damage matters so damn much in this game that the fact that that breakpoint no longer exists is a really bad thing for this character. Now, in order to compensate that, they actually reduced the recovery time from 0.7 to 0.65 seconds, so her overall damage is going to be relatively the same. We're going to have to wait and see the exact numbers. I'm going to probably break that down in a future video, but that doesn't really matter in my personal opinion because Ashe really wanted that one-shot capability. Now, while that won't necessarily hurt Ashe in some of the lower ranks, because I still think Ashe has a lot of tools to do consistent damage and she has a lot of tools to like peel away with her coach gun and things like that, when you're specifically playing Ashe and Mercy together in a lot of the team compositions in the higher ranks, I think that Ashe is just not going to look as appealing, and Mercy is also going to take a big hit from this because she's not going to have a natural pocket in the same way as Ashe. But if I would have to give one character to take the spot of Ashe, it would have to be Echo, because now Echo can get pocketed by a Mercy. She's a better pocket than Ashe is, and Ashes that are being pocketed can't one-shot that Echo, so that really is an imbalance in the matchup all of a sudden. That was already honestly a pretty close matchup, but Ashe was keeping it in check. Now, looking forward for Ashe, she's a fine character, but I wouldn't be surprised if she sees a decrease in pick rate, but honestly, not for just her nerfs, to some of the big nerfs that we gotta talk about in a second about the tanks. And I would also really love for Blizzard to keep an eye on Echo because I think she has the most likely chance of being absolutely uncontested going forward. Even in a hit scan meta, she is still very powerful, and now that one of the hit scans is losing her predominant one-shot capability, it might even be more so. Now, the next character on the experimental list that we gotta talk about is none other than Hanzo, who got a relatively smaller change where his shot recovery time with his storm arrows got reduced from 0.3 to 0.25 seconds. Now, they said in here that it doesn't seem like it's gonna be a lot, but it adds up over the course of 5 arrows, because you gotta realize that every single gap in between the arrows is a 0.05 second increase, but there are 4 transitions between the arrows, so it does indeed add up, and it's gonna make the storm arrow feel a lot smoother, a lot less downtime when you're using these arrows, so there's gonna be more burst damage. You know, sometimes a problem with Hanzo arrows in particular is you shoot one and an enemy will move before you get the second one across. Even when you're using storm, there'll be less time for enemies to move now, so you can fire like at a standing still target from far away in joint succession, and it might be able to hit them and then hit them again before they actually realize and move out of the way, unless they're actively moving. And like I said, gonna be more reliable at close range because there's less downtime. Storm arrows is just gonna be a better ability altogether. And the thing that's really important for you to understand is one of the actual imbalanced matchups a lot of the time was the sniper matchups, all of the snipers. You gotta think about the sniper matchups that exist, right? Ashe, Widowmaker, and Hanzo. Well, Ashe specifically, the reason that her getting damage boosted was so good was because she could one-shot these other snipers, and that was one of the big characters, or these were the characters that were really holding her back in previous metas, because they could one-shot and she could not, but if she's damage boosted, she can. Well, now if she's damage boosted, she can still one-shot that Widowmaker with only 175 HP, but she cannot one-shot Hanzo, and of course McCree as well. So those are other characters that actually have some way to fight against that Ashe. Now, that being said, however, I'm not even sure that Ashes would get damage boosted anyways, because it doesn't really make sense against the rest best of the cast against supports and the other DPS, but regardless, Hanzo's one of those characters that still has good matchups against Ashe, even if she gets pocketed, good against Widow, and with a changing meta, specifically a changing shield meta, probably coming soon, Hanzo might be primed to see a lot of play, but I'm going to talk about that with our next change I wanted to break down. None other than Sigma, who undoubtedly got the biggest change out of all these characters with the most implications about the new meta. So as you know, I put Sigma as the most powerful character in the entire game, but he just got a big nerf where his actual redeploy cooldown of his experimental barrier got increased from 1 to 2.5 seconds. Now, if this doesn't seem like a big deal to you, you know the little gap that exists with Sigma where you take your shield down and you want to put another one back up? Well, multiply that by 2 and then add a little bit more. That's about what it's going to feel like when you are trying to reposition your Sigma barrier. This is really bad for the character of Sigma because one of the most powerful aspects of Sigma is that you could reposition your shield on a dime. Someone's contesting the flank, you could put your shield there. Oh, you need to block a cooldown, you could whip out your shield. You need to balance it so where you can take it down and put it back somewhere else and save your shield for a while but pop it up whenever you need. You can always do that. And with this increase in cooldown, a lot of those things really aren't possible anymore. You also got to think about all the playmaking abilities that enemies can use now with a giant window to guarantee its success. Things like Roadhog Hook, Earth Shatter, Onanade. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And now Sigma can't be reactive to those things. He has to be predictive. And even if he is predictive, enemies can just, you know, focus down his barrier, wait for him to put it down, and then they have 2.5 seconds to actually guaranteed get that cooldown off. Now, some people might have various opinions about what this is going to do to Sigma, but in my personal opinion, this is going to completely dethrone Sigma and make him not the best tank even by a mile in the new meta. And as ramifications for that, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a completely new tank meta forming, especially with Wrecking Ball seeing nerfs. But definitely let me know what you think about this change in the comments down below. Do you think it's a good change? Do you think it's a bad change? Do you think Sigma is still going to be powerful? I really want to know your insight in the comments down below, and I'll be replying to some of the comments. But let's talk about the last change before we talk about the implications for all these changes and the most likely new meta that we're going to see. So Wrecking Ball got a new change where when you use your adaptive shields, you're going to get that base 100, but you're only going to get 75 per every single target that you're near instead of getting that 100. So that's going to be a lot less than previous. It's going to be 25 less for every single person that you would have hit with your adaptive shield. So actually, that's quite a bit of survivability. This means you're gonna have to be a little bit less greedy depending on the compositions that you're running through, when you're slamming, how much CC you're slamming into. And while I don't think that this is gonna make the character bad all of a sudden, I think the character is still freaking nuts. I do think that Wrecking Balls are gonna have to play a little bit more safer. And a lot of times when you're up against a Wrecking Ball, you're gonna have a little bit more opportunity to punish that Wrecking Ball if they get too greedy, because they're not going to be able to get as massive of adaptive shields. So that's something important for you to understand. I think this is a pretty good change, just making Wrecking Ball a little bit easier to punish. Now, the next question that's going to come up is, where are we? What happens now that Sigma, the best tank, is all of a sudden probably very weak? Who takes that throne? Does Wrecking Ball still see a lot of play? And honestly, it is really hard to know. Specifically with the big fall to Ashe and Sigma, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a very different dive-based sort of composition surrounded by some of the top characters plus new ones that are filling the void. Think about a composition centered around Wrecking Ball, Tracer, Echo, and Mercy. These 4 characters are all highly mobile, and you gotta think about, okay, well, what do you do up against an Echo that's pocketed? Well, you could play a McCree, but who do you play him with? You can't play him with Sigma anymore because Sigma's pretty bad, and if you do, there are key weaknesses that exist. So maybe you play him with a Ryan. That could be okay, but Wrecking Ball is very good at booping Ryan out of position and basically making it so Ryan can't contest the Wrecking Ball at all. So there are a lot of different factors that go along here, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a really high base mobility composition in the higher ranks, but the lower ranks can't mirror such a composition because of just how difficult that composition would be to run. It requires a lot of coordination and a lot of individual high mechanical skill. So I'd automatically think that the lower ranks would default to something like maybe Ryan Zarya to specifically enable characters like Hanzo and McCree, and then then maybe have characters like McCree to contest that echo if the enemy does indeed play it. But like I said, these are highly speculative because honestly, you never know what's going to happen when the top dog, the thing that actually has a domino effect on the entire meta, all of a sudden gets nerfed so heavily. When you have a character that powerful that really can completely hold some characters down and prop some characters up, and that character gets removed from the equation, and I know he's not completely removed from the equation, but he is a lot weaker than he used to, then everything can change. And that's something that's really important for you to understand, and I think it's the big takeaway from this video. Metas are like domino effects that really rely on all the interlocking pieces to maintain it, and when one big piece changes, the entire thing can. But the best way to make sure that you are ready for any change in the meta is to improve your individual skills at every single character and learn from in-depth Grandmaster VODs so that you can easily climb the ranks of Overwatch. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for coming by. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.